In your work, you deal a lot with different ideas of nature and culture, originality and modification, naturalness and artificiality. Where does this interest come from?
I grew up with a big garden. I harvested vegetables, built dens in bushes and wove floral wreaths. I felt like a cat in the garden. My mother used to get furious when someone spoke of his garden as overgrown. It was an English landscape park, she said. Next to the picture-perfect suburban gardens of the neighbours and the neatly serrated vineyards of the surrounding area, my mother's garden did indeed seem a bit like rank growth. Back then, I also browsed through the books on my parents' bookshelves and read a lot about plant cultivation and garden design. I think it was already then that I started to get interested in how we as human beings relate to and deal with nature. Is what we consider nature really natural?
What role do plants play in your work and in your life?
Now I have a small urban garden myself. For the most part, my partner and I just let grow what wants to grow. But we also love to grow plants from fruit seeds. Although we always think of the animals in the garden and try to create a good environment for bees and birds, every now and then we catch ourselves sowing exotic plants or pulling out greenery we don't like. In my work, I try to examine us humans and our relationship to nature. Plants, natural and artificial, play a major role in this.
In your most recent works, the mask appears as a new element. What interests you about the mask?
The question of mask and identity has interested me for a long time. A few years ago I had an experience in Shanghai. I saw a beauty mask floating in the brackish water of the Huangpu River. Although it was only white tissue with a schematic cut out for mouth, eye and nose, I still had the feeling of recognizing a human face in the water. That was more or less the initial trigger for me to deal with the mask in a cultural historical context.
In your video, Always Be Afraid of the Living Masks, various 3D animated masks appear in front of a real filmed landscape. The masks rotate in front of the landscape. It seems as if they are showing themselves from all sides, but still remain schematic, abstract. It seems as if the masks act as empty signs. What do the masks in your video stand for?
The masks stand for fragments of images that are anchored in our collective consciousness. We recognize the form, but the meaning and history remain largely unknown to us. Our visual and emotional memory still retrieves information about them, but it remains incomplete.
When you research new works, you often deal with historical contexts that are then incorporated into your works in one form or another. What was the process like in your work with the masks?
Here, too, I spent a long time looking into masks in various cultural and historical contexts. Above all, I was interested in how our relationship to masks has changed over time. It is important for me to understand these contexts.
Which masks did you choose as a reference?
I wanted to depict as broad a spectrum of masks from different cultures as possible. The choice then came with the joy of discovering the most diverse forms and expressions.
In the exhibition at NoCube, you show the video in the immediate vicinity of a silicone scarf hanging from the ceiling. On the scarf you again see a stylized mask. What interests you about the material silicone, which you often use in your sculptural works?
I only use artificial materials for my works. Silicones belong to the group of synthetic polymers. For me, these materials reflect the artificiality of cultural and social conceptions.
In addition to the video, 3 other new works by you can be seen in the exhibition. They are filigree objects installed in the space, almost floating. Here, among other things, silicone appears again as a material. Strange-looking, almost transparent silicone skins are sewn onto mirror-like silhouettes. How do you come up with the shapes of these objects?
The shapes evolve more or less of their own accord. They emerge as an image in my head and conquer their space. Nevertheless, I believe that they are also an expression of our collective consciousness and go beyond my individual imaginings. After all, our history and surroundings shape us.
Is there a historical context here, similar to the masks in your video?
Yes, but it is perhaps less tangible. In any case, the spatial elements in which the silicones are fixed refer to architectural components.
It seems as if there is a connection to the masks, since the silicone objects are remotely reminiscent of mask-like structures. Did masks play a role in the work on the objects?
No, actually these objects were created out of a different context. In essence, however, I am again dealing with cultural tradition and paradigm shifts.
The supporting parts of the objects are painted in skin tones. How did this choice of color come about?
The objects in this form were created especially for this exhibition. In this context, they have taken on the skin tones of the faces that are absent from Dagmar Keller's black and white portraits. Despite all their differences, the objects enter into communication with the portrayed.